The crowd outside the Fresh Mart supermarket stood frozen like statues. A glossy black Bentley had just screeched to a stop right at the curb, standing out in an almost surreal way amid the dusty parking lot of a suburban Boston shopping plaza. This was Dorchester, a neighborhood where luxury cars like this rarely ever appeared. No one had any idea what was about to happen. The car door opened. A woman stepped out, tall, radiant, power emanating from every stride she took. She wore an elegant cream-colored jumpsuit. Her red-soled Louboutin heels struck the asphalt with sharp, deliberate clicks. Her glossy brown hair was neatly tied up. Diamond earrings shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. A Cartier watch caught the light, flashing so brightly that several people had to raise their hands to shield their eyes. Victoria Sterling. In Boston, everyone knew her. In fact, all of America did. The tech billionaire, founder of Apex Technologies, cover star of Forbes, Fortune, and Wired. One of the most powerful women in the United States. The woman every mother wished her daughter would become. The woman business leaders dreamed of having even 5 minutes of conversation with. But today, Victoria wasn't here for a meeting, not for an interview, not to buy a bottle of premium wine. She was walking straight toward a janitor. He stood beside a row of shopping carts, a broom in his hands, sweeping dry leaves scattered across the sidewalk. His dark blue uniform was faded and wrinkled from being washed too many times. His black hair was tangled as if it hadn't been combed in days. Stubble covered his chin, not long enough to be called a beard, not short enough to look neat. His eyes were sunken, fixed on the ground as though he were trying to avoid the entire world. He looked up when he heard the sound of heels approaching, confused, startled. No one ever came up to him voluntarily, certainly not a woman from an entirely different world like this. Victoria stopped in front of him, less than a meter away. She smiled, softly, warmly, and with a sincerity that felt almost unreal. "My name is Victoria." The man blinked several times, as if he needed to confirm this wasn't a hallucination. "Marcus," he replied, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Marcus Kane." Then, before anyone had time to breathe, she said something no one could have imagined. "I've been watching you. For the past 6 months, I've come here almost every day. I've seen how you talk to customers. Not out of obligation, but because you genuinely listen to them. I've seen how you explain change to that little kid, patiently, clearly, like a real teacher. I've heard you discussing data, business optimization, algorithms with the warehouse manager, as if you'd lived in that world your entire life." Her heart was pounding so fast she could hear it herself. "I don't know who you are, where you come from, or what brought you here. But I believe, truly believe, that you don't belong in this place. You just need a second chance." Marcus stood still. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever seen anything in him beyond a lost janitor. So she took a breath. She looked straight into his eyes. "Will you marry me?" The street seemed to stop breathing. An elderly woman pushing a cart froze mid-step. 2 teenagers nearly dropped their Slurpees. A man in his car rolled down the window, unable to believe what he was seeing. Inside the supermarket, employees behind the glass stared with eyes wide as saucers. Marcus's mouth fell open. This had to be a joke, a prank, hidden cameras, some outrageous challenge by bored rich people. There was no way a woman like her would propose to a worn-out janitor like him. A bitter smile crossed his face. "If you're really serious," he said, "go inside, buy a ring, come back out, kneel down and ask me again, as if you truly mean it." The crowd erupted in whispers. Is he crazy? Who turns down a billionaire? But Victoria didn't waver. She wasn't offended. She wasn't embarrassed. "All right." Then she turned around and walked straight into the supermarket. 5 minutes later, she came back out. In her hand was a black velvet box. She opened it. Inside was the most expensive diamond ring the supermarket carried, $4,700. The diamond wasn't enormous, but it was sharp, clear, and brilliant enough to make the entire crowd fall silent. And then, in front of dozens of people recording, crying, laughing, live streaming, Victoria Sterling knelt down on the dusty pavement. "Marcus Kane," her voice trembling, but her gaze unwavering. "Will you marry me?" Marcus stood frozen as if turned to stone. Phones were raised and everywhere. Some people cried to him. Some laughed. Traffic slowed as drivers leaned out of their windows. An elderly man clutched his chest, overwhelmed. Marcus looked down at the woman kneeling before him, the woman who had everything, yet was offering him what he had lost long ago, belief. His eyes burned. He nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "I will." The crowd erupted with emotion. Victoria slid the ring onto his hand, a hand rough with calluses and dust. He stared at it as if it belonged to a world that was never meant to be his. She stood up and smiled. "Now get in the car." He hesitated, glancing down at his old uniform, his worn shoes, the dirt under his nails. "I'll dirty your seat. That car, it's worth more than everything I've ever owned combined. Leather seats can be cleaned. This moment can't." Marcus removed his dirty apron and folded it carefully like a farewell ritual. She opened the door. He stepped into the Bentley. The smell of new leather and the cool air conditioning made him dizzy. The door closed, the car pulled away. And Marcus, the man who believed life had forgotten him, had no idea that his story was only just beginning. 6 months earlier, the wall clock in the office showed 8 p.m. Victoria Sterling was still sitting there alone in the corner office on the 47th floor of the Apex Technologies building, looking down at Boston submerged in a sea of lights. She had just finished a 4-hour board meeting. Revenue this quarter was up 23%. The stock had reached an all-time high. A new partner from Japan had just signed a $200 million contract. On paper, everything was perfect. Yet she had never felt so empty. The room was vast, filled with expensive things, a mahogany desk imported from Italy, handcrafted leather chairs from England, abstract paintings on the walls worth millions of dollars. And yet there was no laughter, no warmth, only the low hum of the air conditioner and the ticking of the clock. Victoria looked down at the photograph on her desk. Ethan, her son, grinning broadly on his 12th birthday. A bright blue shirt, a skateboard under his arm, eyes glowing with a happiness that felt like a lifetime ago. That smile was the only thing still strong enough to pull her out of bed every morning. Her phone vibrated, a message from Ethan. "Mom, can you come home and have dinner with me? I made spaghetti but burned it. The nanny says it's okay, but I want to eat with you." Victoria closed her eyes, tears welling up. How many dinners had she missed? How many bedtime stories? How many Sunday mornings making pancakes? How many moments that no amount of money could ever buy back? She thought of her parents, Robert and Eleanor Sterling. Her father was a literature professor at Boston University, her mother a pianist. They weren't wealthy, but their small house in Brookline was always filled with laughter and music. Every evening, her father read Shakespeare to Victoria while her mother softly played the piano in the background. They taught her that success wasn't measured by money, but by the people you love. They died in a car accident when she was 27, just as Apex Technologies began turning a profit. A rainy night in November. A truck lost control on Interstate 90. Her parents were on their way home after a concert celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. She didn't get to say goodbye. She didn't get to say "I love you" one more time. That night, she had snapped at her mother on the phone because she reminded Victoria not to work too late. "I know, Mom, I'm busy. I'll call you tomorrow." Those were the last words she ever said to her mother. The call from the hospital came at 3 a.m, and her world collapsed. For months afterward, she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything except sit in the dark, asking herself why she hadn't said "I love you" one more time. Then there was Daniel, her husband. They met at Harvard at a conference on artificial intelligence. He was a doctoral researcher in architecture. She was an MBA student. He was tall, handsome, with a smile that made her forget everything else. They fell madly in love, the kind of love she thought existed only in novels. Their wedding took place in a small church in Cape Cod with only about 50 guests. Daniel cried while reading his vows. Victoria believed they would walk through life together until the very end. When Ethan was born, they became one of the happiest families in Boston. Daniel quit his job to stay home with their son while Victoria continued building Apex. They made plans, a house in the suburbs, 2 more children, summer vacations in Europe. Then one morning, Daniel disappeared. Victoria remembered it vividly. Tuesday, March 15th. She woke up at 6 a.m. as usual, but the other side of the bed was empty. She thought Daniel had gotten up early to feed Ethan. When she went downstairs, Ethan was sitting alone in the dining chair, crying from hunger. Daniel was nowhere in the house. The car was still in the garage. His wallet was on the table. His phone was still charging on the nightstand. But Daniel, the flesh and blood man, was gone. No explanation, no message, no warning signs. The police searched for months. The FBI got involved, suspecting criminal elements. Private investigators were hired at a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars. But there were no traces, no body, no evidence of kidnapping, accident, or suicide. Daniel, 32 years old, had simply vanished from the world. Ethan was only 4 at the time. He kept asking again and again, "Where's Daddy? Mom, where did Daddy go?" Victoria didn't know how to answer. She could only hold her son and cry. For years she waited. She kept the old phone number, the old email address, the old house in case Daniel came back and needed to find them. Every night she prayed. She hoped that one day the door would open and Daniel would walk in with some reasonable explanation. Maybe he had lost his memory. Maybe he had been kidnapped and escaped. Maybe there was some story she hadn't yet imagined. But that day never came, and she was forced to keep living. She poured everything into her work. Under her leadership, Apex Technologies grew rapidly. But every night returning to the large empty mansion, she felt less like a human being and more like a machine designed to generate money and profit. Ethan needed a father. She needed a companion. But her heart had frozen on the day Daniel disappeared. A week after that night in the office, Victoria was driving home after an exhausting day when she realized she needed to stop at a supermarket. The refrigerator was almost empty. She had forgotten to shop for an entire week. Normally she ordered online or had the nanny handle it, but today she wanted to pick out fruit for Ethan herself. She turned into Fresh Mart, a modest supermarket in Dorchester that she had never visited before. This wasn't an area she usually frequented, no Whole Foods, no Trader Joe's, just a local store with a pothole-filled parking lot and faded signage. While she was choosing apples in the produce section, she heard a voice behind her. "No, you calculated it wrong if you have $10 and buy 3 items at $2.50 each. You'll have $2.50 left, not $3.50. Let me explain again. $2.50 times 3 is $7.50. 10 minus $7.50 leaves $2.50. See?" She turned around. A janitor was squatting beside a boy of about 8, patiently explaining the math. The boy seemed to be a customer's child, holding a $10 bill and a few small toys, trying to figure out if he had enough money. The janitor's uniform was wrinkled and faded. His hair was messy, his beard uneven. But the way he spoke, clear, logical, patient, made Victoria stop short. This wasn't the way someone who only swept floors talked. It was the voice of a teacher, of someone accustomed to analyzing and explaining. "Oh, I get it now," the boy exclaimed. "Thank you." The janitor smiled, a rare, fleeting smile, as if he had forgotten how to smile and was relearning it. "You're welcome. Just remember, math isn't hard. You just need to remember the rules in practice." Victoria stood at the end of the aisle, a bag of apples in her arms, silently watching. She forgot entirely what she had been doing. She returned to Fresh Mart the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. At first she told herself it was just convenient. Then she told herself the fridge was empty again. Eventually she stopped telling herself anything. She simply went. Every time she saw the same man. He swept, gathered carts, mopped floors, took out the trash, mundane, repetitive, dull work. But occasionally she caught him talking to someone, and every time she was more surprised. Once she saw him help an elderly woman find medication. The woman needed a pain reliever but couldn't remember the name. He patiently asked about her symptoms, asked what she had used before, then led her to the correct shelf. Low-dose aspirin would be better if you have heart issues, but you should ask your doctor before using it regularly. Another time she saw him speaking with a young employee struggling with the inventory management software. This system uses the FIFO algorithm, first in, first out. If you want to optimize it, you need to track inventory by batch numbers, not product codes. That will reduce losses from expired goods. Yet another time she overheard him discussing shopping habits with the store manager. Frozen food sales increase about 15% in winter, but drop around 20% in summer. If you adjust display space seasonally, Revenue could increase by at least 10%. Data from large chains consistently shows that. The manager looked at him as if he had just spoken a foreign language. Process optimization, customer data analysis, FIFO algorithms, seasonal consumption trends. These were concepts familiar only to industry insiders. Even Victoria, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, had needed years of work to truly internalize them. Who is he? Victoria wondered every night as she lay awake, unable to sleep. Why was someone who spoke like this sweeping floors in a suburban supermarket? She began to investigate, carefully, discreetly. She didn't want to invade his privacy, but she had the resources to learn the basics. His name was Marcus Kane, 43 years old, had worked at Fresh Mart for 3 years, lived alone in a small nearby apartment, no criminal record, no debts, no listed family contacts. As if 3 years ago he had stepped out of nothingness. But when Victoria dug deeper and with a billionaire's resources, that wasn't difficult. She found a name familiar yet strange. Also Marcus Kane, but a PhD in data science from MIT. Marcus Kane, former director of analytics at a top consulting firm. Marcus Kane, once invited to speak at TED on the future of big data. Then that name disappeared 5 years ago. All traces stopped. No more articles, no more conferences, no more public appearances, as if he had died. But he hadn't died. He was sweeping floors in a suburban Boston supermarket. What had happened between these two versions of the same name? Victoria couldn't find the answer, but she found something else, a strange belief. She believed this man didn't belong here. She believed something had pushed him off the cliff of his life, leaving him clinging to the edge with barely enough strength to hold on. He needed a hand to pull him up, and she wanted to be that hand. One night, lying in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, a crazy thought suddenly occurred to her. If she offered him a job, he would almost certainly refuse. He would think she pitied him, that she was simply a wealthy benefactor. He would retreat, closing off his heart. But what if she did something big enough to prove she was truly serious? She shook her head. Crazy. Completely crazy. But the thought wouldn't leave her. It followed her into sleep, followed her to the office, followed her through every meal. It whispered every time she saw Ethan smile, a smile missing the presence of a father. Victoria sat in her office late one evening, the city lights of Boston spread before her like a sea of stars turned upside down. She drafted an email to Marcus, unsent, just a draft. Mr. Kane, I want to invite you to work at Apex Technologies. She deleted it. Too safe. He would refuse. She tried again. Mr. Kane, I believe you have talent. Delete. It sounded like flattery. Victoria stood looking down at the city. She thought about Ethan, a 12-year-old boy who needed a male role model. She thought about herself, a 42-year-old woman afraid of loneliness but unable to love. She thought about Marcus, a man who had once stood at the top, now sweeping trash. Victoria made her decision. I won't just offer him a job. I'll do something he can't refuse. I'll prove I'm truly betting on him. Not out of pity, but because I see his real worth. She would propose to him. And that insane decision led to the moment outside the Fresh Mart supermarket where a billionaire knelt before a janitor. Back to the present, the Bentley glided smoothly through the streets of Boston, heading toward the upscale Back Bay district. Marcus sat rigid in the passenger seat, clutching an old canvas bag tightly on his lap. His eyes constantly darted back and forth between Victoria and the road ahead. He didn't say anything, neither did Victoria. There was only soft jazz from the sound system and the almost silent hum of the electric engine. Everything felt like a dream, a strange dream, absurd, illogical, impossible to be real. That morning he had still been invisible, just a shadow in a faded uniform, sweeping trash outside the supermarket, trying not to think about anything. And now he was the fiancé of the most admired woman in America, and he couldn't even understand why. What does she want from me, he wondered. Is she crazy? Or am I crazy? Or are we both crazy? Victoria glanced at him. His eyes were bloodshot, not from emotion, not yet, but from years of breathing dust, of sleepless nights, exhaustion, and the slow destruction of merely existing rather than truly living. There were so many things she wanted to ask. Who he was, what had happened, why he was here. But she knew it wasn't time. He needed time. He needed space. He needed to be treated like a human being before he could open his mouth and tell the story of his life. First, he needed to become a person again. "We'll stop somewhere first," she said gently. Marcus only nodded, asking nothing. The car stopped in front of a high-end barbershop on Newbury Street, the most luxurious shopping street in Boston. The sign read, "The Gentleman's Quarter, Grooming and Spa." The clear glass door revealed a gleaming marble floor inside, gold-trimmed mirrors, a polished mahogany counter, and luxurious black leather chairs. A man wearing a white shirt and a gray vest stepped out to open the door, a professional smile on his lips. That smile faltered slightly when he saw Marcus, dirty uniform, messy hair, patchy beard, but immediately returned to perfection when he saw Victoria step out of the Bentley. "Miss Sterling," he exclaimed, his voice full of respect. "We are honored to serve you." Victoria walked in. Marcus followed behind. "He's with me. I want the best service for them, everything. Haircut, shave, skincare, all of it." The man only nodded. "Of course, ma'am." In the world of people like Victoria Sterling, there were no questions, only obedience. Victoria turned to Marcus and smiled. "Let them take care of you. I'll wait outside." Marcus wanted to say something, perhaps it's not necessary or I don't deserve it. But Victoria had already turned away, stepping outside before he could open his mouth. For the next hour and a half, Marcus sat motionless in the black leather chair, closing his eyes and letting unfamiliar hands work on his body. They cut at his hair, long tangled strands falling to the floor, lock by lock. They washed his hair, warm water and herbal shampoo sinking into his scalp, rinsing away years of dust. They shaved him, each gentle stroke of the razor gliding over his cheeks, his chin, his neck, peeling away the shell he had built over so many years. And as the razor passed over his skin, memories rushed in. Sarah, his wife, she had once sat on the bed watching him shave every morning, teasing him. "I like you better with a beard. You look more masculine." From that day on, he grew one. And after she died, he never shaved again, as if the beard were the last thread tying him to her. Now it was falling to the floor, strand by strand, as if he were erasing the last remaining part of his old self. Tears suddenly spilled out, mixing into the shaving foam. The barber startled, stopping his hand, worried. "Sir, are you okay? Did I hurt you?" Marcus drew a deep breath, his chest trembling slightly. "I'm fine. Keep going." The barber hesitated for a moment, then continued. When they finished, they handed him a mirror. Marcus looked into it, and he didn't recognize the man staring back at him. A sharp jawline emerged beneath freshly shaved skin. High cheekbones, slightly thinner than he remembered, but still carrying a strong structure. His black hair was cut short and styled to the side, revealing a thoughtful forehead. His eyes, those eyes he had avoided looking at for years, were still tired, still heavy with sorrow. But there was something new in them. A spark, a sliver of hope, a hint of life. "Is that me?" he wondered, raising a hand to touch his face. "Or the shadow of who I used to be?" An employee approached, holding a new outfit, a tailored white dress shirt, fitted black trousers, polished cognac leather shoes. Victoria had arranged it in advance, guessing his size correctly. Marcus hesitated for a brief moment. The last time he had worn clothes like this was at a funeral. 5 coffins, 5 of the people he loved most, and he had stood there in a black suit, unable to cry because he had run out of tears, unable to speak because his throat was locked tight, unable to do anything but stand still like a corpse among corpses. He took a deep breath, pushed the memory aside, and stepped into the changing room. When he came out, Victoria rose from the chair where she had been waiting. Her eyes widened, her lips parting slightly. Where only a few hours earlier there had been a shabby, dirty, invisible janitor, now stood a completely different man, a man she had only glimpsed through the way he spoke about data and people in the supermarket, a man who carried intelligence, quietness, and a kind of hidden power. The power of someone who had once stood very high and knew he could return there. "This is the man I saw," she murmured, as if confirming it. Marcus stood there, not knowing what to do with his hands, looking like a teenager going to prom for the first time. I feel like, he hesitated, like I've come back to life, like I've just stepped out of a grave. You haven't seen anything yet, come on. They returned to the car and continued driving home. When the Bentley stopped in front of the mansion gates, Marcus's eyes widened. This is your house? Victoria smiled. No, this is our house now. The iron gates opened slowly, revealing a huge white mansion with a wide glass facade. 2 rows of tall maple trees lined up along the driveway. In the middle of the courtyard, a fountain welcomed them with white sprays of water. Marcus stepped out of the car slowly, like a child walking into a fairyland. Inside, the house carried a faint scent of vanilla and lavender. From the high ceiling, crystal chandeliers cast warm light on the grand staircase. A curly-haired boy, eyes still heavy with sleep, stood rubbing them. He wore pajamas printed with Captain America. Mom, who is that? Victoria opened her arms. Ethan, come down and say hello, sweetheart. The boy didn't move. He stood still, looking at Marcus with cold eyes. This is Mom's friend. His name is Marcus, and he'll be staying with us from now on. Ethan stared at Marcus from head to toe, saying nothing. Then he turned to his mother. Another one? Victoria flinched. Ethan. The boy continued, his voice hard. How long is this one going to stay? Marcus felt the air freeze. He understood. This boy had seen too many men come and go, or worse, had never seen anyone, and now there was a stranger in his home. Marcus lowered himself, bending one knee so he was at the boy's eye level. Hi, Ethan. I know this is weird. I'm a stranger in your house. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm just someone your mom believes in, and I'm going to try very hard not to let her down. Or you. Ethan didn't answer. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, his gaze full of suspicion and something else, something that looked like old, buried pain. My dad left when I was 4. I don't remember him, but I remember waiting. The boy's voice was steady, but his eyes were red. Are you going to leave too? Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. He didn't know what to say, because honestly, he didn't know himself. He didn't know if he would stay, if he could stay, if he deserved to stay. Victoria stepped forward. Ethan, that's enough. Go to your room. The boy turned and walked toward the stairs, each step deliberate. Before he disappeared, he looked back at Marcus one more time. If you hurt my mom, I'll make your life hell. Then he was gone. Marcus stood up slowly, his hands trembling slightly. Victoria sighed. I'm sorry, he's been through a lot. Marcus shook his head. He has every right to be angry. And honestly, I don't blame him at all. That night, Victoria arranged a guest room for Marcus on the 2nd floor. Martha, the housekeeper, brought up a tray of food, roast beef, mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables. Marcus ate slowly, savoring each bite. How many years had it been since he'd eaten a meal like this? Afterward, he stepped out onto the balcony and sat watching the lights of Boston glitter in the distance. The city looked like a sky full of stars turned upside down. Victoria came over carrying 2 glasses of wine. She sat beside him and handed him one. Now, her eyes still on the horizon. Tell me, who are you, Marcus Kane? He stared at his hands for a long time, the calluses, the scars, the traces of a life she didn't yet know. That's a long story. I have all night. Marcus drew a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into the depths of memory. And then he began, My name is Marcus Kane. And you're right, I wasn't always just a janitor. His voice was low and rough, as if every word carried the weight of an entire decade of pain. I earned my PhD in data science from MIT when I was 27. I worked with international companies. Google, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs were all clients of mine. I trained analysts, built predictive models for banks and hospitals. I was invited to speak at MIT at Stanford. I had a TED Talk with over 2 million views. Victoria remained silent, simply listening. I had a wife, Sarah Kane, Sarah Marie Sullivan. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was a cybersecurity expert, brilliant beyond words. But what made me fall in love with her was her laugh. That laugh could make me forget everything in the world. His gaze drifted somewhere far away. We had 2 children. Noah, he looked just like his mother. By age 8, he had already read the entire Percy Jackson series. And Lily, 6 years old now. Back then she was one, impossibly adorable. All it took was one smile and the whole family melted. He paused, his breathing becoming uneven. My parents lived with us. My father had been a mathematics professor at Boston University. My mother was an ICU nurse at Mass General. They retired early to be close to their grandchildren. The house in Newton was always noisy, children's laughter, my mother singing in the kitchen, my father flipping through the newspaper, Sarah calling me downstairs for dinner. Marcus stopped and closed his eyes. That was a perfect life. I had everything a man could ever dream of. Silence stretched for a long moment, until one day in December. Marcus swallowed hard, his shoulders trembling slightly. We planned a winter vacation in Colorado. Ben, the whole family, Sarah, Noah, Lily, my parents. Noah was excited about skiing. Lily kept asking, "Daddy, are there snowmen there?" He drew a deep breath, his breathing uneven. That morning I had an important meeting. A major client from Washington, D.C. had flown to Boston. The meeting couldn't be postponed. I told Sarah I would fly out to join them the next day. He opened his eyes, staring into the empty space ahead. That morning, I remember every detail. It was cold, a thin layer of snow still left over from the night before. I was in a hurry. The meeting started at 9. Sarah was feeding the kids breakfast in the kitchen. Lily spilled her milk and burst into tears. Noah was arguing with his grandmother about how many books he was allowed to bring. He let out a soft, broken laugh. A perfectly ordinary, chaotic morning. I had no idea it would be the last time I ever saw it. Marcus's voice suddenly cracked. Sarah walked to the door with her bag over her shoulder. She was wearing the red coat I had given her for her birthday the year before. She turned back and said, "Marcus promised me, don't let work make you forget the trip." His chest heaved. I was staring at emails on my phone. I only looked up for a second, said, "I promise," and kissed her absent-mindedly. Just a light touch on her cheek. I didn't even look her in the eyes. Tears rolled down his face. I didn't hug the kids. I didn't kiss them goodbye. Noah ran to the door. "Bye, Dad," and I just waved. Lily was in my mother's arms, still crying about the spilled milk. I didn't step closer to her. The taxi arrived. I stood at the door, waving as they left. Sarah, Noah, Lily, my parents, the 5 people I loved most in the world, got into the car and headed for the airport. His voice dropped to a whisper. That was the last time I ever saw them. Victoria raised a hand to cover her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. The plane took off at 9 a.m. from Logan Airport, United Airlines Flight 1574 to Denver. At 9:47, while the plane was at 35,000 feet over Pennsylvania, a catastrophic engine failure occurred. The aircraft lost control and crashed into the Allegheny Mountains. He stopped. There were no survivors, 167 passengers and crew. 5 of them were mine. The air felt heavy enough to touch. I found out from the television. I was sitting in a conference room preparing to present. Someone turned on the breaking news about the crash. I looked up and saw the flight number, United 1574. The rest I don't remember clearly. People told me I screamed, smashed my laptop, collapsed onto the floor. My colleagues had to call an ambulance. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. "Mr. Kane," the doctor said, "we're very sorry." That was when I knew it wasn't a nightmare. Marcus closed his eyes tight. The days that followed were hell. I had to go to the morgue to identify the bodies. 5 people. The 5 people I loved most. Victoria sobbed aloud. "They weren't intact anymore, Victoria. The plane fell from 35,000 feet. I had to identify them by what was left. Sarah's wedding ring, the bracelet Noah had strung himself from blue plastic beads. Lily's teddy bear, she called it Mr. Snuggles. My father's watch." His voice caught. But Lily was only 1 year old. She survived. Victoria's eyes widened in shock. "What?" Marcus nodded, tears flowing freely. "She was thrown from the wreckage. A miracle," they said. "She was in a coma for 2 months. When she woke up, she had no memory of the crash. But she kept asking, 'Where's Mommy? Where's Noah?' I couldn't answer her. I couldn't even look at her. Every time I saw her face, I saw Sarah. Every time she smiled, I saw Noah. I was a broken man trying to raise a broken little girl." The weight of his words hung in the air like smoke. The funeral was held on a rainy day. 4 coffins lined up in the church: Sarah, Noah, my parents. And I stood there holding 2-year-old Lily, unable to cry anymore because I had already run out of tears. After the funeral, I couldn't live in that house for even one more day. Everything reminded me of them: my father's chair, the corner of the kitchen where my mother cooked porridge, Noah's room filled with toy cars. I started drinking. 1 glass, then 2, then an entire bottle. Whiskey was the only thing that let me sleep without dreaming about them. Then I stopped going to work. The company called. I didn't answer. Friends came knocking. I didn't open the door. I just wanted to disappear from the world. Victoria's hands trembled as she held her glass. Child Protective Services came. They said Lily needed a stable home. My sister Janitor, she lives in Portland, she took Lily. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got better. But I never got better. Marcus's voice became hollow. A year later, I lost my job. 6 months after that, I lost the house because I couldn't pay anymore. I sold everything. I kept exactly 2 things: a family photograph and Lily's teddy bear. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn box. He opened it. Inside was a family photograph: Sarah, Noah, Lily, his parents, and him, all smiling brightly. This is the only thing I have left. Victoria stared at the photograph, tears flowing freely. I wandered for a while, slept in my car, and when I no longer had the car, I slept in parks. Then one day I saw the hiring sign at Fresh Mart. They needed a cleaner. They didn't ask about the past. They just needed someone willing to work. He gave a small shrug. And I just needed a place to exist. Not to live, just to exist. For the past 3 years, I've swept floors, lined up carts, cleaned toilets. I kept conversations with anyone to a minimum. I just counted the days passing and wondered when it would all finally end. Marcus lifted his head and looked straight into Victoria's eyes. Then you appeared and asked me if I wanted to marry you. Victoria wiped her tears, her voice breaking. I understand that pain, Marcus. I lost my parents in an accident too, and my husband disappeared when Ethan was only 4 years old, without a single explanation. I waited for years, but he never came back. Marcus looked at her, stunned. You built all of this after all that? She nodded. I had to live for Ethan and for myself. Marcus lowered his head. You're a true warrior. Victoria smiled through her tears. So are you. You just haven't realized it yet. They sat in silence together for a long time. The distant sounds of the city, the wind moving across the balcony, the steady beating of 2 hearts that had once believed their lives were already over. Marcus took a deep breath. For the first time in 5 years, he didn't just feel like he was alive. He began to feel that he wanted to keep living. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of birds singing outside the window. Warm sunlight slipped through the sheer curtains. The rich aroma of coffee drifted up from downstairs. For a few seconds, he simply lay there, listening to everything. This feeling of peace, how long had it been since he had last touched it? Then his phone rang, Jennifer's number. His hand hesitated over the phone before he answered. Marcus, I saw the news. TikTok, Twitter, everywhere. Is it true? You're engaged to Victoria Sterling? Marcus was silent. Marcus, what are you doing? You haven't seen Lily in 3 years. The words hit like a knife to the chest. I know. She asks about you every day. When is Daddy coming? Do you know how hard that is? Jen, she wants to talk to you. Before Marcus could protest, a small voice came through the line. Daddy? Marcus gripped the phone with both hands, trembling. Hi, baby. Daddy, where are you? Are you coming home? I'm in Boston, sweetheart. Aunt Jen showed me a video. You have a new friend, a pretty lady. There was a pause, and then Lily's voice came again, soft and hopeful. Are you going to be happy now, Daddy? Marcus couldn't answer. He choked on the words, tears spilling down his face. Daddy, don't cry. I love you. I love you too, baby. So much. When can I see you? Soon, I promise. Okay, bye, Daddy. The call ended. Marcus sat on the bed, his head in his hands, crying without restraint. The weight of 3 years pressed down on him all at once. The guilt, the shame, the unbearable distance between who he had been and who he had become. Downstairs, the tension from the previous night hadn't lifted. Marcus entered the dining room where Victoria already sat, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit, sunlight falling across her face. Ethan appeared moments later, wearing his school uniform. He sat beside his mother without looking at Marcus. The silence was sharp enough to cut. Victoria tried to lighten the mood. Marcus will start working at Apex today. Ethan didn't look up. Great. Marcus attempted to bridge the gap. Ethan, I know this is hard. The boy cut him off. You don't know anything about me. You're right, I don't, but I'd like to. Ethan finally looked at Marcus, his eyes cold and guarded. Why? So you can pretend to be my dad for a few months, then leave like everyone else? Marcus met his gaze without flinching. I'm not going to pretend to be your dad. I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm just someone trying not to screw up the second chance your mom gave me. And if you hate me, that's okay. I deserve it. Ethan stared at him for a long moment. Then he stood up. I'm late for school. He left without another word. Victoria sighed. I'm sorry. He's usually not like this. Marcus shook his head. Yes, he is, and he has every reason to be. That afternoon, Marcus followed Victoria into the 50-story glass tower that housed Apex Technologies. Inside, it felt like a different world, light reflecting off chrome and glass, confidence in every step the employees took. Everyone was busy. Everyone had a purpose. Then the whispers started. Eyes turned toward Marcus. Who is that? I've never seen him before. Is he her new partner? Marcus walked past the murmurs, feeling only the cold creeping into his hands. They rode the elevator to the executive floor. Victoria opened the door to a corner office, spacious, bright, with a panoramic view of Boston. On the desk lay an elegant card. Welcome, Mr. Marcus Kane, Director of Strategic Data Analytics. Marcus froze. This is for me? Victoria nodded. As of today, you are Apex's Director of Data Analytics. You report directly to me. Marcus still couldn't believe it. But my resume, it's completely blank for 5 years. Who would hire? I'm the CEO. I have the authority to hire anyone I want. But not everyone at Apex welcomed his arrival. At the first leadership meeting, Marcus stepped into a conference room filled with 15 senior directors. All eyes turned to him like he was an intruder in their kingdom. Victoria made the introduction. This is Marcus Kane, our new Director of Strategic Data Analytics. David Morrison, the CFO, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and gold-rimmed glasses, was the first to speak. Excuse me, Miss Sterling, but who exactly is Mr. Kane? I can't find any professional record of him over the past 5 years. The room went silent instantly. Every gaze fixed on Marcus. Marcus took a deep breath. For the past 5 years, I've been a janitor at a suburban Boston supermarket. A wave of whispers spread across the room. David repeated the word, dripping with undisguised contempt. A janitor? Marcus continued, his voice strangely calm. Before that, I earned a PhD from MIT. I consulted for Google, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs. The room went quiet. 5 years ago, I lost my wife, my son, and my parents in a plane crash. My daughter survived, but I lost everything, and I no longer wanted to live. There were no more whispers now, only a heavy, suffocating silence. Miss Sterling gave me a second chance, and I will do everything to prove she wasn't wrong. Then a voice cut through from the back of the room. Well, Marcus Kane, I thought you were dead. Marcus turned, his body going rigid. A man stepped forward from the shadows. Blake Morrison. 45 years old, wearing an Armani suit, hair slicked back, a smile as cold as winter steel. Victoria frowned. Blake, what are you doing here? I'm a consultant for Apex now, didn't you know? Your board hired me last month. Marcus and Blake stared at each other. The air between them crackled with unspoken history. Blake continued, his voice dripping with mockery. Marcus and I, we have history. We used to work together until he had his little breakdown. Tell me, Marcus, are you sure you're ready to play with the big boys again? Or are you just here because you married the boss? Marcus stood, his hands clenched into fists, but Victoria placed a hand on his shoulder. Blake, that's enough. Blake smiled coldly. I'm just looking out for the company, Victoria. After all, we can't have another incident. He turned and left, letting the question hang in the air like poison gas. After the meeting, Victoria and Marcus returned to her private office. She closed the door. Who is Blake Morrison? Marcus sat down, his face pale. Blake and I worked together 8 years ago at Titanium Corp, a major analytics firm. I was VP of Analytics. Blake was VP of Sales. We were competing for the CEO position. He paused, his jaw tight. 3 months before the crash, Blake and I were pitching for the same client, a $50 million contract. I won. Blake accused me of stealing his data, his strategy. He went to the board, tried to get me fired. It didn't work. The board sided with me. Blake was demoted, humiliated in front of the whole company. Marcus looked at Victoria. He swore he'd destroy me. And then the crash happened. Blake sent me one email a week after the funeral. I'm sorry for your loss, but karma is a bitch. Victoria stared at him, horrified. He said that? Marcus nodded. I never responded. I just disappeared. And now he's here. The first week of work became Marcus's personal hell. On day 1, he was assigned to analyze customer data. When he opened the file, 40% of it was corrupted. Someone had sabotaged it. On day 2, during a team presentation, the screen was hacked mid-presentation. An image appeared, Marcus in his janitor uniform with the words, "From janitor to director, sleeping your way to the top." The room erupted in snickers. Marcus stood there, his face burning red, his hands trembling. Victoria stormed in. Who did this? No one answered, but Marcus saw Blake standing in the doorway, smiling. By day 3, rumors spread like wildfire throughout the company. Marcus Kane is Victoria's boy toy. He's only here because he's sleeping with her. He has no real skills. Marcus walked through the hallways and heard the whispers. A young female employee giggled to her colleague. I wonder what he's like in bed to get that position. Marcus closed his office door and sat down, his head in his hands. On day 4, an anonymous email was sent to the entire company. The subject line read, The truth about Marcus Kane. The body detailed the plane crash, Marcus's collapse, his abandonment of Lily. It concluded with a damning question. This man abandoned his 2-year-old daughter and became homeless. Now he's manipulating our CEO for money. Is this the kind of person Apex wants to represent us? Marcus read the email, his entire body shaking. He stood, walked straight to Blake's office, and pounded on the door. Blake! Blake opened it, still smiling. Marcus, how nice to see you. You did this, the email, the rumors, everything. Blake shrugged. I have no idea what you're talking about. But if someone is concerned about your qualifications, can you blame them? After all, you haven't worked in 5 years. You're living in Victoria's house, wearing clothes she bought. People talk, Marcus. It's only natural. Marcus stepped closer. Stay away from me. Blake's smile turned sharp. Or what? You'll cry? You'll run away like you did last time? Face it, Marcus. You're a broken man pretending to be whole, and everyone knows it. That night, Marcus didn't go home. He drove to a park and sat on a bench in the rain. The cold seeped into his bones. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Victoria. I'm sorry, I can't do this. You deserve better. I'm leaving. His finger hovered over the send button. Then the phone rang. Victoria. Where are you? Her voice was tight with worry. I'm at the park. Stay there, I'm coming. Victoria, I can't. Stay there. 20 minutes later, the Bentley pulled up. Victoria stepped out without a coat, her hair damp from the rain. She ran to him and sat on the bench beside him. What happened? Marcus handed her his phone. She read the anonymous email, her face going pale. This is Blake, isn't it? Marcus nodded. Everyone thinks I'm a fraud, and maybe they're right. No, they're wrong. You don't understand. I'm ruining your reputation. I don't care about reputation, Marcus. I care about you. Victoria took his hand, her grip firm. And if Blake wants a war, he's going to get one. The next morning, Marcus didn't quit. He came back to Apex. Victoria called an emergency meeting of the entire leadership team. I want to address the rumors about Marcus Kane. Yes, I offered him this position. Yes, we're engaged, but he is here because of his skills, not because of our relationship. And to prove it, I'm giving him a challenge. She turned to Marcus. Marcus, Apex has a problem. Our cloud infrastructure is costing us $8 million per year. We're paying for 40% of capacity we never use. I want you to find a solution. You have 2 weeks. The room erupted in shock. Blake laughed. 2 weeks? That's impossible. It took our team 6 months just to audit the system. Victoria's gaze didn't waver. Marcus, do you accept? Marcus looked at Blake, then back at Victoria. I accept. The next 14 days were a crucible. Marcus worked 16 hours a day. He read thousands of lines of code. He analyzed terabytes of data. He built predictive models using Python and TensorFlow. The technology had changed so much in 5 years. New frameworks, new paradigms, new ways of thinking. Marcus felt like someone who had stepped into the future without a map. There were moments when he wanted to close the laptop and walk away. I don't belong here. I'm just an imposter. But then he remembered Victoria kneeling on the sidewalk, her eyes full of faith in a man who had lost himself. He couldn't betray that trust. Marcus kept going. He arrived the earliest, he left the latest, and slowly the sharp analytical instincts he once had began to return. Not gone, just buried in silence for too long. Late one night around 2 a.m., Marcus was still in his home office, the laptop screen glowing in the darkness. He heard soft footsteps. Ethan appeared in the doorway wearing pajamas, his hair messy. Can't sleep? Marcus looked up. Working. I have a deadline in 2 days. Ethan stepped inside and sat in the chair beside the desk. A long silence stretched between them. Why are you still awake? Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. I need to prove to your mom's company that I'm not just some guy she picked up. I need to show them I deserve to be there. Ethan looked at the screen, filled with charts and data. Do you understand all of that? Marcus smiled faintly. Most of it. Some of it I'm relearning. Relearning? I used to do this before I lost my family. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then his voice came, softer than before. My dad left when I was 4. I don't remember his face. I just remember waiting, every night, thinking he'd come home. He looked at Marcus. He never did. Marcus stopped typing and turned to face the boy. Are you going to leave too? Marcus took a breath. I don't know, Ethan. I don't know what the future holds. But I can promise you this, if I leave, it won't be because I don't care. It'll be because I failed. Not because you or your mom aren't enough. Ethan nodded slowly. That's fair. He stood up, ready to leave. Then he turned back. Marcus? Yeah? Hope you don't fail. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Thanks, kid. After Ethan left, Marcus turned back to his screen, but something had shifted. There was a new reason to fight now, not just for Victoria, not just for himself, but for a 12-year-old boy who had learned too young what it meant to be abandoned. On the 14th day, the boardroom at Apex was packed. The entire leadership team was there. James Thornton, the 55-year-old chairman of the board, sat at the head of the table. Blake Morrison lounged in the corner, his expression smug. Victoria sat nearby, her eyes full of quiet encouragement. Marcus stood at the front of the room, a remote in his slightly trembling hand. Mr. Kane, the floor is yours. Marcus took a deep breath. He looked at Victoria. She nodded. He looked at Blake. The man smirked. Good morning. I know many of you doubt why I'm here. Some think I'm unqualified. Some think I'm a fraud. Today, I'm not here to defend myself with words. I'm here to show you what I can do. He clicked the remote. The first slide appeared. Apex Technologies is currently spending $8 million per year on cloud infrastructure, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud combined. The second slide showed a detailed usage chart, but our actual usage, only 60% of that capacity. We're paying for 40% of resources we never touch. Why? Because our allocation system is outdated. Blake interrupted. We know that. The question is, can it be fixed? Marcus looked directly at him. Yes, and I've already built a solution. The room went silent. Marcus continued, his confidence growing with each slide. I analyzed 3 years of operational data, every single transaction, peak hour, seasonal pattern. I found something no one noticed. Our cloud allocation uses a static model. It assumes we need the same capacity 24/7, 365 days a year. But that's not how business works. He brought up the next slide. Our traffic peaks between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. It drops 60% on weekends. It drops 40% during holidays. Yet we're paying for full capacity all the time. David Morrison sat up straight. What are you proposing? A dynamic allocation algorithm. Using machine learning, we can predict demand patterns. Scale up during peak hours. Scale down during off-peak. This is called predictive autoscaling. The next slide showed simulation results. I ran simulations using our past 3 years of data. If we implement this system, we can reduce cloud costs by $1.8 million per year. That's 22.5% savings, with zero impact on performance. The room was frozen. James Thornton leaned forward. You're saying we can save almost $2 million just by optimizing allocation? Yes, and that's just the beginning. Marcus clicked to the next slide. There's more. Our data pipeline architecture is also inefficient. We're using batch processing for data that should be stream processing. This causes delays and redundant storage costs. If we migrate to a stream-based architecture using Apache Kafka, we can cut data processing time by 40% and reduce storage costs by another $300,000 per year. The final slide appeared. Total potential savings, $2.1 million per year. Blake stood up abruptly, his face red. This is bullshit. You can't just waltz in here after 5 years and... James Thornton's voice cut through like a blade. Sit down, Blake. But I said sit down. Blake dropped into his chair, his fists clenched. James turned back to Marcus. Mr. Kane, this is impressive, but implementation, how long? 6 months for full deployment, 3 months for predictive autoscaling, 3 months for stream architecture migration. And the risk? Minimal. We implement in phases with rollback protocols at each stage. I've already built a prototype. It's running on a test environment right now. You can see live data. Marcus opened his laptop and projected the screen. A dashboard appeared, showing real-time cloud usage, cost projections, and savings tracking. The entire board stared in disbelief. Someone asked, when did you build this? The past 2 weeks, 16 hours a day. Victoria's eyes glistened with tears she refused to let fall. James Thornton stood. Gentlemen, I've seen enough. Mr. Kane, this is the most impressive analysis I've seen in my 30 years in tech. Welcome to Apex Technologies. Officially. The room erupted in applause, not polite, but genuine. Blake Morrison stood and left without a word, slamming the door behind him. That evening, the three of them sat down for dinner at the long table in the mansion's dining room. Martha had prepared a special meal: steak, roasted vegetables, a bottle of wine for the adults, and sparkling cider for Ethan. Victoria raised her glass to Marcus, who proved everyone wrong. Ethan hesitated, then lifted his glass as well. Yeah, that was pretty cool. Marcus laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd made in years. It felt foreign in his throat, like a muscle he'd forgotten how to use. After dinner, Ethan stood and lingered near the doorway. He turned back, his expression guarded but softer than before. Marcus, tomorrow is Saturday. I have a soccer game. Do you want to come? Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. You want me there? Ethan shrugged, trying to appear casual. Mom always comes alone. It'd be nice if you came too. I'd love to. Ethan nodded, hiding a small smile. Cool, good night. He disappeared upstairs. Victoria looked at Marcus, her eyes warm. He likes you. I think I'm starting to like him too. After Ethan went to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat in the living room. A fire crackled in the hearth. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to him. They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. You were incredible today. Marcus shook his head. I was terrified. You didn't show it. I've had a lot of practice hiding how I feel. Victoria turned to face him, her expression serious. Marcus, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it, saying yes that day at the supermarket? Marcus looked at her for a long time, weighing his answer. Every day I wake up and think, this is a dream. This can't be real. A woman like you, brilliant, beautiful, successful. Why would you choose someone like me? Broken, empty, nothing to offer. Victoria set down her glass and took his hand. You're not broken, Marcus. You're healing. And you're not empty. You're full of everything you've survived. As for what you offer me, she looked straight into his eyes. You remind me that I'm not alone. For 8 years, I've been a machine. Work, Ethan. Work, Ethan. No time for myself, no space to feel. But with you, I feel alive again. Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. Victoria, I don't know if I can love again. After Sarah, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm just asking you to stay. Marcus looked at her, his heart pounding. For the first time in 5 years, he felt his frozen heart begin to thaw. Victoria gently placed her hand on his cheek. He didn't pull away. She leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft, tentative, trembling. Two people learning how to love again after having lost everything. A kiss between two souls that had been shattered and were now finding their way back toward light. When they pulled apart, Marcus's voice was unsteady. I'm scared. So am I. But maybe that's okay. The fire crackled between them, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, carrying with it the scent of autumn and change. The next morning, Marcus's phone rang. Jennifer again. He answered, bracing himself. Marcus, Lily wants to see you. His chest tightened. I know, I've been thinking about it. She's been asking every day. I can't keep making excuses. Marcus closed his eyes. Okay, I'll come to Portland this weekend. Really? Yes, it's time. After the call ended, Victoria found him standing by the window, staring out at nothing. Are you ready? No, but I have to be. Do you want me to come with you? Marcus turned, surprised. You'd do that? Of course, you don't have to face this alone. Marcus pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt like someone had thrown him a rope. On Saturday morning, Victoria, Marcus, and Ethan flew to Portland, Oregon. The entire flight, Marcus sat in silence, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Victoria reached over and held his hand. Ethan sat across the aisle, glancing over occasionally with an expression that looked almost like concern. When the plane landed, they rented a car and drove to Jennifer's house, a modest single-story home in the suburbs with a small garden in front. Marcus stood on the pavilion, his hand hovering over the doorbell. Victoria stood beside him. Ready? No, but let's do this. The door opened. Jennifer appeared, 40 years old, with brown hair and eyes that mirrored Marcus's. She looked at him for a long moment, then pulled him into a tight hug. Marcus, it's been too long. Thank you for taking care of her. She's my niece. I love her. Jennifer glanced at Victoria and Ethan. You must be Victoria. And Ethan, come in. They stepped inside. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Toys were scattered across the living room floor. And then Marcus saw her. Lily Kane, 6 years old now, no longer the 1-year-old he'd last held. She had long brown hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a pink dress, clutching the worn teddy bear, Mr. Snuggles. She looked up and her eyes went wide. Daddy? The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. He dropped to his knees. Hi, baby. Lily ran to him and threw her arms around his neck, squeezing so tightly he could barely breathe. Daddy, I missed you so much. Where were you? Marcus held his daughter, sobbing openly. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I was lost. But I'm here now. Lily pulled back and looked at his face. She reached up with her small hand and wiped the tears from his cheeks. Don't cry, Daddy. I'm here. I'll take care of you. Marcus laughed through his tears. You're supposed to be the kid. But you're sad, so I'll be the grown-up. Victoria stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stood beside her, his own eyes red. Lily noticed them and walked over, tilting her head curiously. Are you Daddy's friend? Victoria knelt down. Yes, sweetheart. My name is Victoria. Lily studied her carefully. Are you pretty? Victoria smiled. I don't know. What do you think? Lily nodded seriously. Very pretty. Daddy has good taste. Everyone laughed. Then Lily turned to Ethan. And who are you? Ethan crouched down to her level. I'm Ethan. I'm Victoria's son. Do you like superheroes? Yeah, Captain America is my favorite. Lily's face lit up. Me too. Want to see my Captain America shield? Ethan nodded, and the two of them ran off upstairs. Marcus stared after them, bewildered. Did they just become friends? Jennifer laughed. Kids are simpler than adults. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus and Jennifer sat outside on the porch. The Oregon air was cool and clear. Stars spread across the sky like scattered diamonds. So, Victoria Sterling. The Victoria Sterling. Marcus nodded. I know. It's crazy. How did it happen? Marcus told her the story from the first time Victoria saw him at Fresh Mart to the moment she knelt on the sidewalk. Jennifer listened, her eyes growing wider with each detail. Marcus, do you love her? He was silent for a long time. I don't know. I'm scared to. Why? Because the last time I loved someone, I lost them. And if I love Victoria and Ethan and even Lily again, what if I lose them too? Jennifer placed her hand on his shoulder. Marcus, you've been dead for 5 years, not physically, but inside. You stopped living because you were scared of losing again. But that's not living. That's just existing. She looked at him with fierce intensity. Sarah wouldn't want this for you. She'd want you to be happy. She'd want you to love again. And she'd want Lily to have a family. Marcus's voice broke. How do you know? Because I knew Sarah. She was my best friend before she was your wife. She told me once, if anything happens to me, promise you'll make Marcus live. Really live. Tears spilled down Marcus's face. She said that? Jennifer nodded. She'd want you to be happy, Marcus. And she'd want Lily to have a family. The next morning, as they prepared to fly back to Boston, Lily clung to Marcus's hand. When will you come back? Marcus knelt down, eye level with his daughter. Lily, I want to ask you something. How would you feel about living with Daddy in Boston? Lily's eyes went wide. Really? With you and Victoria and Ethan? Yes, we'd be a family. Lily jumped up and down. Yes, yes, yes. Then she stopped suddenly. But what about Aunt Jen? I love her. Jennifer knelt beside her, smiling through tears. I love you too, sweetheart. But your daddy needs you, and you need him. I'll visit all the time, okay? Lily nodded and hugged her aunt tightly. Marcus looked at Victoria. Are you sure about this? Victoria's voice was firm. We're in this together, remember? Marcus pulled her into his arms. Ethan walked over and after a moment's hesitation, placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Welcome to the family, man. They flew back to Boston with Lily. On the plane, she sat between Marcus and Ethan, asking endless questions. She showed Ethan her teddy bear. This is Mr. Snuggles. He's very old. Ethan nodded seriously. He looks like a good bear. Are you my big brother now? Ethan hesitated, then smiled. Yeah, I guess I am. Cool. Can you teach me how to play soccer? Sure. Victoria watched them from across the aisle, her heart swelling. Marcus reached over and took her hand. When the plane landed in Boston, Lily pressed her face against the window, staring at the city below. Is this home now? Marcus's voice was soft. Yes, baby. This is home. They drove back to the mansion. When Lily saw it, she gasped. This is like a castle, Ethan grinned. Wait till you see the backyard. The two children ran off together, their laughter echoing through the halls. Marcus and Victoria stood in the foyer watching them go. We're really doing this, aren't we? Victoria smiled. A single dad and a single mom raising two kids together. Sounds insane. Completely insane. They laughed, then pulled each other close. 2 months passed. Marcus settled into his role at Apex, working closely with the engineering teams to implement the predictive auto-scaling system. The savings were even better than projected, $2.3 million in the first quarter alone. The board was impressed. David Morrison, once skeptical, became one of Marcus's strongest allies. At home, Lily enrolled in a local elementary school. She made friends quickly, joined the school choir, and filled the house with her laughter. Ethan became fiercely protective of her, walking her to the bus stop every morning and helping her with homework every night. Victoria found herself coming home earlier, spending more time with the family. Dinners became a nightly ritual. They talked, laughed, argued over board games. The mansion, once cold and empty, now felt alive. One evening, Victoria found Marcus standing in front of the mirror in their bedroom. He was holding a small velvet box. "What's that?" He turned, his expression nervous. "I bought something. I wanted to do this right." Victoria's breath caught. "Marcus, wait, let me say this." He opened the box. Inside was a platinum ring with a single diamond. Simple, elegant, beautiful. He took her hand. "7 months ago, you knelt on a dusty sidewalk in front of me. You gave me a chance I never thought I deserved. You saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You gave me a new life. You gave me hope. You gave me a family." His voice trembled. "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life becoming worthy of the love you gave me." He held up the ring. "This time I want to do it the right way. Victoria Sterling, will you be my wife?" Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. They kissed, and it felt like the world outside disappeared, leaving only the two of them in that moment. Downstairs, Lily and Ethan were watching a movie. Lily looked up. "Do you think they're going to get married for real?" Ethan grinned, nodded. "Yeah, I think they are." "Good, I like it here." "Me too." The wedding took place 2 months later in a small church in Cambridge, just a few blocks from MIT. Unlike the lavish ceremonies people expected from a female billionaire, Victoria wanted something intimate. Only 80 guests, family, and true friends. The morning of the wedding, Marcus stood at the altar in a black suit, his hands clasped in front of him. Ethan stood beside him as best man, wearing a smaller version of the same suit. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a pink dress and clutching a basket of rose petals. The doors opened. Victoria walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, her hair swept up, holding a bouquet of white lilies. James Thornton, the chairman of Apex's board, walked beside her. He had volunteered to give her away, and she had accepted gratefully. When Victoria reached the altar, Marcus felt his chest tighten. She was breathtaking. She smiled at him, her eyes full of emotion. "Ready?" "I've been waiting for this my whole life. I just didn't know it." The officiant began the ceremony. When it was time for vows, Marcus spoke first. "I, Marcus Kane, take you, Victoria Sterling, to be my wife, in sickness and in health, in wealth or in poverty, until death parts us." He paused, then added softly, "And beyond that, I promise to always remember that you saw me at a time when I could no longer see myself. You gave me a life I thought I'd lost forever. You gave me hope when I had none, and I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of that." Victoria's voice shook as she spoke. "I, Victoria Sterling, take you, Marcus Kane, to be my husband. You showed me that broken doesn't mean unfixable, that lost doesn't mean gone forever, and that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is believe in them, even when they can't believe in themselves. I will love you, I will fight for you, and I will never give up on you." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Marcus and Victoria kissed, and the church erupted in applause. Lily and Ethan stood side by side, holding hands and grinning. The reception was held in the garden behind the mansion. White tents, long tables, lanterns strung between the trees. Guests mingled, music played softly in the background. Marcus and Victoria danced their first dance to "Can't Help Falling in Love" by Elvis. She rested her head against his chest. "I'm so happy." "So am I, for the first time in 5 years." Lily and Ethan ran through the garden, playing tag with some of the other children. Marcus watched them, smiling. Victoria followed his gaze. "They're happy. We all are." Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. A commotion near the entrance. Guests turned, murmuring. A man stepped through the gate, tall, gaunt, with an unkempt beard and rumpled clothes. He looked like he'd been living rough. Victoria went rigid. Marcus felt her body tense beside him. The man walked forward, his voice hoarse. "Victoria?" She took a step back, her face draining of color. No, it can't be." Daniel Sterling, her husband, the man who had vanished 8 years ago. Marcus moved instinctively between Victoria and Daniel. "Who are you?" Daniel's eyes were hollow, haunted. "I'm her husband." Ethan stood frozen a few yards away. His voice came out small, broken. Dad? Daniel turned toward his son, his face crumpling. Ethan, oh my God, Ethan. But Ethan didn't move. He stood rooted to the spot, tears welling in his eyes. Victoria's voice cut through the silence, sharp as broken glass. Daniel, what are you doing here? You left 8 years ago. You vanished. I know, and I'm sorry, but I can explain. Marcus's voice was cold. Explain. You disappeared without a word, left your wife, left your 4-year-old son, and now you show up at her wedding? Daniel looked at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. Who the hell are you? I'm her husband. You can't be. I'm her husband. Victoria's voice was hard, unyielding. No, you were. I had you declared legally dead after 7 years. We're divorced, Daniel. You lost that right when you left. Daniel sank into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. Victoria, please. I didn't want to leave. I was in prison. The entire garden fell silent. Every guest stared. What? Daniel's voice was barely audible. I was arrested. Federal charges, insider trading. I was working for a hedge fund. They found out I was leaking information. I didn't do it, but they had evidence, fabricated, but I couldn't prove it. I was sentenced to 10 years, no parole. Victoria shook her head, disbelief written across her face. That doesn't make sense. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. I was supposed to be the man who provided for you, and I was going to prison. I thought you'd be better off without me. So I ran before the arrest. I disappeared. His voice cracked, but they caught me anyway. 3 days later in New York. I've been in a federal prison in upstate New York for 8 years. No contact with the outside world. Part of my sentence. I was released 2 weeks ago. Early release for good behavior. He looked up at Victoria, tears streaming down his face. I came here to find you, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. I didn't know you'd moved on. Victoria's voice was ice. Moved on? Daniel, you left me with a 4-year-old. I waited for years. I hired investigators. I thought you were dead, and you were just in prison, and you didn't even try to contact me? I was a coward, I know. Ethan stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. You're not my dad anymore. Daniel reached toward him. Ethan, please. No, my dad wouldn't leave. My dad wouldn't lie. You're a stranger. Ethan turned and ran into the house. Lily, frightened by the shouting, clung to Marcus's leg. He picked her up. It's okay, baby. I've got you. Victoria looked at Daniel, her expression unreadable. Daniel, I'm sorry for what happened to you, but you made your choice 8 years ago. You chose to run. You chose to hide. You chose to lie. I loved you. God, I loved you so much. But you're not the man I married anymore. And I'm not the woman you left. Now, Daniel stood, desperation in his eyes. Victoria, please. I know I don't deserve it, but you're right. You don't deserve it. She looked at Marcus, standing beside her with Lily in his arms. This man, he was broken. He lost everything. But he fought. He came back. He chose to live. You chose to run. Her voice softened, but only slightly. I wish you well, Daniel. I really do. But you need to leave. Now. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged. He looked up at the second-floor window where Ethan stood watching, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. He turned and walked back through the gate, disappearing into the night. The guests stood in stunned silence. Victoria's body shook. Marcus set Lily down gently and pulled Victoria into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing. It's okay. I've got you. I thought I was ready. I thought I'd moved on. But seeing him, you have moved on. He's your past. I'm your future. Victoria looked up at him, her eyes red but determined. You're not my future, Marcus. You're not betraying the dead by being happy. You honor them by continuing to live. 3 years later, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror, his hand resting on the marble countertop. It was 4 a.m. Victoria was asleep in the next room, her belly swollen with their child, a son they planned to name Oliver. The pregnancy had been a surprise, a gift neither of them expected. Marcus couldn't sleep. Memories kept flooding back. Sarah, Noah, the crash, the funerals, the years of darkness. But now, standing in this house filled with life and love, he felt something he hadn't felt in a decade. Peace. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Boston sprawled below, its lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, people were struggling, grieving, wondering if they'd ever feel whole again. He wanted to tell them, you will. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Victoria stirred in bed. She opened her eyes and saw him standing by the window. Can't sleep? Just thinking. She got up, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, and joined him. About Sarah? He nodded. And Noah, and my parents, I feel like I'm betraying them by being happy. Victoria took his hand. You're not betraying anyone, Marcus. You're honoring them by living, by choosing to love again, by being the father, the husband, the man they'd want you to be. Marcus turned to her, pulling her close. Thank you for saving me. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. Oliver Kane Sterling was born on a bright spring morning when cherry blossoms bloomed across Boston like bursts of pink against the blue sky. Marcus held his son for the first time, his hands trembling. The tiny body fit perfectly in his arms. Oliver's eyes were closed, his small hand gripping Marcus's finger. Hello, my son. I've waited for you for a very long time. Lily stood nearby, now 9 years old, her eyes bright with excitement. Can I hold him? Marcus nodded, gently placing Oliver into Lily's arms and guiding her on how to support his head carefully. Little brother, I'll protect you. I promise. Ethan, now 15, stood beside them, looking down at the baby with a soft smile. He's pretty cool. Marcus and Victoria looked at each other, both their eyes glistening. This was their family. Not perfect, but real. Not whole from the beginning, but pieced together with love, loss, and second chances. A family in the truest sense. 1 week after Oliver's birth, Marcus drove to Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge. The historic cemetery was quiet, with winding paths and maple trees turning red and gold in the autumn light. Beneath the canopy of leaves, 4 graves lay side by side. Sarah Kane, Noah Kane, Robert Kane, Elizabeth Kane. Marcus knelt down and placed 4 bouquets of fresh flowers on the headstones. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I once believed I didn't deserve to keep living. I thought happiness was a betrayal of those who were gone. He placed his trembling hand on Sarah's grave. You will always be my first love. Our children will always be my angels. But now I want to live. I want to live for them who? For Victoria, for Lily, for Ethan, for Oliver. I hope you'd be proud. He paused, then spoke to Noah's grave. Noah, you would have been a great big brother. Lily has grown into a brave, smart girl. And Oliver, he carries your grandfather's name. But I know he carries a part of you too. His voice broke. Thank you for letting me keep living. He stood up slowly and turned. Victoria stood a few yards away, holding Oliver in her arms. Lily and Ethan stood beside her. Victoria smiled through her tears. Marcus walked back to his family. And as he reached them, the maple trees whispered in the autumn wind, their red leaves glowing like small flames. Marcus took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, his chest didn't feel heavy, as if the stone that had pressed on his heart for so long had finally been lifted. He took Victoria's hand. She smiled. And in that moment, amid the quiet cemetery and the autumn colors of Cambridge, his life truly began again. 1 year later, on a Sunday morning, Marcus stood into the kitchen making pancakes. Oliver, now 18 months old, sat in his high chair, his hands covered in flour. Lily, 10 years old, sat at the table reading Harry Potter for the 3rd time. Ethan, 16, was teaching Oliver how to say Big Brother. Victoria came downstairs, her hair messy, wearing pajamas, smiling. Good morning, family. Everyone turned. Good morning, Mom. Morning, Mom, Victoria. Mama. Oliver clapped his hands. Marcus turned and handed Victoria a cup of coffee. Sleep well? Best sleep in years. They sat down at the table together. Pancakes stacked high, bacon, eggs, orange juice. The sound of laughter, talking, the chaos of a normal family. Marcus looked around, Lily giggling as Ethan told a story, Oliver clapping whenever anyone looked at him, Victoria smiling with shining eyes. And Marcus thought, this is it. This is what I was fighting for. Not a perfect life, but a real life. A life full of noise, mess, laughter, and love. Outside, the Boston morning sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the city. The streets began to fill with people starting their days. Life moved forward, relentless and beautiful. And inside the Sterling Kane home, a man who once believed his story had ended, now knew it had only just begun. 5 years ago, Marcus Kane was a broken man sweeping floors in a supermarket, convinced that life had forgotten him. Victoria Sterling was a lonely billionaire who had built an empire but lost herself in the process. Then one day on a dusty sidewalk, a woman knelt and bet on a man the world had discarded. Not out of pity, not out of charity, but because she believed. And sometimes all a person needs to stand up again isn't money or power, just someone willing to believe in them one more time. This isn't just a story about love, it's a story about second chances, about faith, about daring to love again and after losing everything, and about becoming the hero of your own life. Because broken doesn't mean unfixable. Lost doesn't mean gone forever. And the darkest night always ends with morning light.